So, ever since I was a kid, I have been into self hypnosis. I got into the powers of hypnosis while getting into paranormal stuff as a preteen and have kind of always been an intronaut in that sense. Since about 2008, I have fairly consistently practiced Zazen meditation, at least as I understand it. And the benefit has been a level of self awareness of my own biological functions that allows me to know when my system is compromised, not like a readout, but just a sense. Then you have to start doing some detective work. It's allowed my mind and my body to become much more connected and closer to each other. Some people are very separate and they don't even realize it. So this video is going to be a daily omnibus of thoughts, the blog post or whatever. And my plan today is to go do, I've got cleaning in the house, I've got possibly some outside stuff to do if it's, depends on what the weather's like. And I'm gonna guess it's gonna be a nice day. And I may take a walk down to the creek. I don't know. And I may video that. If I do video that, it will possibly not be uploaded until the next time I'm in town at work because there's ridiculous coverage and 5 bars and half-hour videos upload in half an hour. So, as opposed to a day and a half out here. Oh, so the technique is you are breathing through your nose. You are attempting to maintain good posture pretty much at all times to emulate the proper posture of meditation. Not that you are in meditation posture at all times, but that your posture is correct so that your spine is aligned. It's a chakra thing. And the way to engage the sinuses for the purpose of controlled breathing is to lightly rest your tongue on the roof of your mouth. And in the appropriate spot, that's almost like there's a nerve, like a, I don't want to say acupressure because you don't really apply a pressure, but by the same principle as acupressure, there's a spot you kind of put your tongue at the roof of your mouth at the right spot. And this is said to engage your third eye. So all that really means is you've got imagination faculties available to you with a mind-body connection, meaning that you have not direct searchable access to things like genetic memory and ancestor memory or like the Akashic record or whatever, but that your mind's subconscious ability to collate has a much larger database available to it that way, or a more sophisticated information to work with. I guess that's the best way of looking at it. So, I've practiced this form of meditation for 13 years now. I'll tell you now, I think this video is going to end up becoming 2 videos for the day. So, I've practiced this form of meditation. I don't know, maybe I'll pull it around. Maybe I'll figure out a way to fit it all within the time. The ability to maintain the calm, adaptive, intuitive mental state while maintaining mind-body connection and being able to move about the world is sort of, it's the same shape as enlightenment, as mastery. So being able to, I don't know, it's hard to explain. Sometimes I don't really understand. I do, but I don't. They're Zen koans are like mental exercises in a sense, but I'm not sure that they actually themselves bear any import. Seemed to me that the ones that I came up with were during the time that I was cracking open that door, but at the same time still had a fully intact materialistic ego in place. And Zen koans are like showing off your zenness. Maybe that's necessary for the learning process, but it's not necessary in practicality. Poetry is nice though, but coming up with a mental riddle with a lesson in it that really just has to do with how enlightened you are is like this thing I did 10 years ago. Not anymore. As I went off of my first mood stabilizer and went on to, I was off insurance and went on to county assistance. County assistance provided a person who could write prescriptions and be a therapist, I think was a doctor, at a different facility. They only, for the funding, had access to alternate mood stabilizers, and they were not as effective. So I chose to learn how to deal with it, and that was where it was like, okay, gonna figure out how to be some sort of Zen master. That's the archetype, the idea of this, you know, standing in the wind kind of thing. So what this state of being has shown me is, and this couples with my experience with hypnosis, self and outward hypnosis. There is a lot that your mind adds to things, and there is a lot of like emotional weight and what it's like anxiety can be like a wall stopping you. And all of these are what you would generally consider negative emotions in that sense. Anxiety is not really an emotion, it's more of an agitated state. And as someone who has it come on from time to time as part of a mood cycle instability or whatever, it doesn't always correspond to anything. And knowing the difference is important because then you can be aware of an anxious state that is simply what your brain is doing versus an anxious state brought on by something you're thinking about, even though technically they are, what your brain is doing. They're different in that sense. An arbitrary, a malfunction or whatever, versus a cognitive process. Anxiety is just a way for you to be alerted and then be in a heightened state of awareness for a bit. And it has a function when it's engaged naturally versus mood disorders or whatever that, do what they do as they do it and you are simply subject to their whim. I've learned how to surf that sea, those waves, because I was able to think back to my childhood and adolescence, teenage years, how I remembered being once I was on a mood stabilizer and at a proper baseline. That how do I want to put it? I just had to remember that I already knew how to do it. But now I was doing it consciously. I was going to see if there was anything at all I could do to navigate while surfing. Because surfing is just skipping across the surface on the shape of a wave. But can we navigate to where on the wave we are? Can we get away from where there are waves if we need to? And this type of thing on a meditative level is that you focus on the analogies and metaphors of various themes. So, like, in my Zazen, better mind body connected meditative states, this is before simply being that way all the time. And even through getting used to being that way all the time. Getting into the fact that, like, my dad was a sailor and an ancestor on the male line was a ship captain, and sailing and navigation, and it just, so there is an inner sea, and the inner sea can be navigated. The waves can't necessarily be changed, but you can either move away from what's making the waves or find a place that is sheltered from the waves. That is analogous to being able to basically transcend the mood swings from time to time. And consciously, it can't really be done because it's a disorder. But unconsciously or subconsciously, which means second nature, it can. So I am already able, through practice, to step through the wall of anxiety, or what was the other example that I used? Lift the emotional weight as if it were nothing. From time to time on certain things. And in some ways, many ways, I make it second nature. It's the goal to be second nature on any of it that I use so that I'm not consciously focusing on it. So here we are almost 15 minutes into this one, about to get to the first real point. From a logical standpoint, consistency shows patterns. The patterns would be things like, at the very start, all other arguments are actually mooted by the truth of the facts. But whether or not anybody is aware of these facts is a whole other thing. So people's public behavior, and we've got this whole mess we're dealing with, and that's like, why I'm making a video talking about this. Okay. If indeed it is a lab leak, those places are secure, sealed, controlled environments. And people got sick. And people got out. If the most secure facilities cannot contain something, what makes anyone reasonably, seriously believe that any of these measures that they've tried to mandate on people, or have in some places mandated on people, would be effective? Ergo, the people that believe it and follow it and do it, do so out of fear and ignorance. Those old enemies, fear and ignorance. And fear is an emotional weight, and ignorance, if you don't know you can step through, then you don't step through that wall of you have to transcend and move beyond things like an anxiety. It's like, okay, we're aware, don't get locked. So think about the way everybody has been told to behave, the way many people have behaved, the way some people were like, oh yeah, whatever. If the highly secure and sophisticated facility can't keep it in, what makes you think anything can really do anything? So then, the only things that wearing a mask really would do then, to be more direct about what I'm addressing, the only thing that would do is give people the actual psychosomatic effect of calming themselves and feeling better about the situation. But there's nothing that can be done. I don't personally believe in self-deception when it comes to things you can do nothing about. Because because of my history of reading tarot and the studies of the occult, I kind of got it to a point where it was like, this enlightenment business is pretty fucking real. Not like, look how it, what I'm saying is there's some real stuff you can do with it. But then I was like, what else is real? That's the logical line of thinking, because if you determine that someone is lying about one thing, you should question, okay, if they're just lying about this thing, what else are they lying about? And it goes the same way in other ways. If this is real, what else is real? Now, it's not always a good idea to fully explore every time that question comes up, because it's like, that it has a gateway effect. There are other instances where it's like, beer is good, I should try whiskey. No. Or weed is good, I should try other drugs. No. But, and in a sense, it's kind of the same when it comes to the occult. One of those things where if enlightenment is real, and whatever it is about the nature of reality that is so deep and divine and cool that people are constantly exploring it, connection between man and God or whatever. What I'm getting at is, in this instance, my studies into the occult led me to tarot. And not like, I pay attention to some horoscopic things, but there are again, symbolic or metaphoric underpinnings that are very relevant, even if the overall idea is something completely different. It's like a type of interferometry. So, I don't use tarot like most other people use tarot. And my explanation of that is for another video. What I have time to say is that there is, in the interpretation of a draw using the deck designed by Aleister Crowley, and what was her name? Lady Helena, whatever, the Blavatsky, yes, Madame Helena Blavatsky. There we go. It's been a while. Their design and interpretation includes a section of cards that you've drawn that represent things that you can do nothing to change. And that became for a long time a fundamental way of looking at things when I initially was dabbling with this. And learning to not cower, I guess, to deal with, to face the things you can do nothing about, because they're still going to be there. It's like, you can't do anything about that pothole at the moment, doesn't mean you have to drive through it, I guess is what I'm getting at. So, having looked and done the research and everything that I did a year ago, and in the intervening time as well, one of the big things was how fear and anxiety were being used to control people, to prevent them from going places and doing things that they would otherwise normally just do. And it manifested, I should say, particularly disturbingly in when people began to actually be told they could, and obeyed, of going places without. And the experience in hindsight of the last 15 months of this, 16 months almost, however long it's been, are we going on 17 months of this nonsense? Officially, it's been almost 2 years. In totality, it's been almost 2 years. Where is the breaking of suspension of disbelief? Where is the point where that mental ability to allow yourself to be guided by simply these other thoughts, held in place or prevented or whatever, to feel weird about walking free-faced into a store for the first time in how long? I understand the basic behavioral psychology habits, I get that. But the enforcement of it, the social and cultural enforcement of it, came down to negative emotions like fear, shame, guilt, anxiety. Once they get you in depression, it's hard to get out. Your brain is situationally depressed. There are feedback loops too. There are countries, I'm almost at my limit and I'm going to switch to the other topic. There are countries that are effectively under martial law to attempt to control this. I think that's an excuse. There are countries that are falling into rioting. There are countries that life has kind of carried on as normal otherwise, and other places where people are like, you can't make me do anything. That's all I have time for in this video. I'm going to record the next segment, and then these will upload subsequently over the next couple of days or however long it takes.